What do the world need to know about paddle if they don't already?
Racket sports improve cognitive function. They improve mental health because of the social aspects. It improves bone health, bone density. So actually for people, it has massive benefits to their actual physical health and mental health. Pain is common, but it's not normal. Stood outside the door in tears. They weren't able to sit down just because of the level of back pain that they had. They'd been told that they'd had a crumbling spine, so they were petrified to move. They didn't want to sit down because they thought their back might break. By the end of that session, he was able to touch his toes.
Do you find that you butt heads with doctors?
I work with some of the best players in the UK, now starting to be some of the best players in the world, and I'm letting them do what they want to do, and it's the high stakes because they're elite athletes. But on the other factor, I can change someone's quality of life that actually could change the whole feeling of their life.
Do you ever get it wrong?
Is there something more? Could I have missed something?
And today we are joined by the paddle physio. How are you doing, Brent?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for coming on. Paddle is something that's taken over the UK and probably overseas and all. But I want to start with a beefy question, right, Brent? And that question is, what do the world need to know about paddle if they don't already?
Oh, it's a big question. Paddle is probably the most fun sport you will ever play. The benefits are huge, but also the biggest thing is it's the biggest social sport. So although it's one of the fastest growing sports in the world, the reason that's happening so much is because it's sociable with friends. The learning curve is very fast. You can get better at it very quickly. And your strength isn't the level of power. There's an element of strategy and thinking. So you don't have to be the most technically gifted player to have a load of fun. You can never have done racket sports within a few times. You can pick it up and you can actually be pretty good.
Do you know what? That's what I love about that game. The fact that it almost never goes out. It's like it's like spawning on COD or something. It feels like it just keeps going and going.
Well, because in tennis, you hit a bad shot, you've got to go and collect the ball. You come back, you start again. You've got all this time in between where you're not actually playing the game. Whereas in paddle, if you miss a shot or it hits out the back, it's literally just at your feet, so you pick it up and you go again. So the time of you hitting balls ends up being significantly more. And I think the average rally in paddle is in the pro level is more into the 30s. Like you hit 30 shots. So they're hitting so many balls between each other, you feel like you're always playing, it just makes it feel like you're good.
The reason that I want to bring you on, Brent, was because, for one, I know you. I've worked with you in the past. But the overarching theme to this podcast, the ContentCAST, is adversity and overcoming adversity. Now, you're probably thinking, why the hell would you get me on? I've never done any criminal activity or like that, as a few of the guests have who've been on. Paddle's something that me growing up, I would have loved it. However, the one downside is what I have noticed is it's very expensive to play. Now, the areas that paddle is in, there's a lot of deprived areas around it. Certainly Sunderland, Durham, where the two true paddles are. I feel like, is it an expensive sport on purpose? Or do you think that it should be made cheaper to be more accessible to these people? And the reason I say that is because wouldn't that give someone another channel to get off the streets and do something positive? Why do you think it's expensive?
So paddle is different pricing in different countries to an extent. It's been established in Spain for a lot longer. So the average court cost in Spain is significantly cheaper than the UK. Difference being, for me, the biggest barrier for paddle would be price. We look into it as it's predominantly run by businesses, and then businesses are always going to be profit driven. But you've got the likes of Jason Manford, who's created an initiative to encourage school kids and get school engagement to try and give kids exposure to the game. There's opportunities for schools and governing bodies and sport to try and encourage engagement. But with it being such a new sport in the UK, the development, the heads of it's a financial model. So it's always going to be, to start with, because there's a lack of court availability, and to have land and to build it costs. As the courts increase, hopefully that will mean that the access to courts becomes more, so the pricing will come down. So hopefully, as it's continuing to grow the way it does, the pricing might match down a bit. But if I was to be deadly honest, the biggest barrier to the development of the sport, definitely going to be finances. Because if you break down court rental costs, coaching, balls, rackets, all that does add up quite quickly, which when you look at the average age of players, is you having players play from their 20s to 70s, 80s, but there's not many sports in the world that you'll have people in around that kind of 20 to 30 age group, whether you want to continuously get better. You tend to find they maybe like the gym, but access to sport, that's not really a demographic that is that engaged in sport anymore, because they're probably maybe past their time in football, or they've had injuries, or they now have work lives and commitments. Whereas with paddle, you don't need to play every single week to still have fun, and you can just grab a few mates, socialise, you're exercising, you're moving, you're doing stuff, you're getting to play together. The access to, if you want to be good, yeah, it's definitely a privileged sport, but hopefully as it grows, we'll see some of them things change, but that's going to come down to governing bodies, so hopefully that can change.
Because I know that what you're doing with the paddle physio is remarkable at the minute. I mean, you've told us off air kind of some of the things that you're up to, and I want to get onto them. But why it's so kind of important that we've got speakers like yourself on talking about this sport is because you're from a whole different world when it comes to this, and paddle wasn't something you grew up with. So how did you, because you're a Sunderland lad as well, aren't you? Mm-hmm. How did you get involved in the sport to a point where you are now? You alright, people? Hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Here's a random one for you. Most of you who are actually watching this episode don't actually subscribe to it. So just do us a favour, will you? Can you click the like button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss another episode, hit subscribe, all that good stuff, because we go up and down the country to try and bring you the best show possible. We're not messing around here, so please just show some love, will you?
Probably like a lot of people recently, I saw on Instagram reel of some highlights of a game and thought, wow, that looks quite fun. And I reckon that'd be quite good. I played a little bit of tennis when I worked overseas. I had exposure to tennis in New Zealand, and I got quite hooked because I worked in some elite level sport and worked with some pros, and I kind of made a bit of a deal with some of the players for physio in exchange for some lessons. So I like submerged myself into it. And then when I saw paddle, I thought, that has all the attributes of things I'm good at, but I don't need all the things I'm bad at in tennis. So I was terrible. My backhand was so weak, I just get bullied on it. It's not really that relevant in paddle. So actually, I first started playing and thought, I'm quite good at this, I might be able to make it. And I think that's the feeling it gives you. You start playing and you pick it up and your progress is so fast. The amount of people I talk to who go, I reckon I could get the GB team. I think I could be pro. And it's a genuine feeling you get. Like, people laugh into it and I think, you think I could. I generally first picked up a racket and played a few times and went, you know what, I reckon I might be able to make this. Get to 35, I'll get in the over 30s team. Maybe I've now worked with a lot of pros and seen the level and the highest quality level of the elite players. Yeah, I'm miles off it. But you still get that feeling. And every time I'm playing, I feel like I'm getting better and want to do more. So it just draws you in and it hooks you in. You just think, this is so fun. But you can see your opportunity to get better so much quicker.
I akin it to FIFA, right? And that's mad. But if I see someone playing FIFA, I want to play it. Mm-hmm. Same with paddle. Even when we were talking earlier, even mentioning paddle, I want it. I was thinking to me, is Drenny be free after this for a quick game? Because it is, you're right, it's one of them things where it's almost addictive when you get on, no matter of your skill set. And that's the thing. And I'm not someone who knows the sport very well. And even for, I play every now and again, and it's fucking unbelievable, to be honest. Yeah. But with the statement that I want to kind of present you with, I would say that it's almost tennis meets squash. Mm-hmm. Would you say that's about right?
People ask me to explain it, and the simplest explanation I'll always say is it's a cross between tennis and squash, surrounded by glass stroke a cage. So you have the tennis ball style ball, but it's a little bit less pressure, so it's a little bit slower. And then your racket, it's a little bit shape-wise like a swing ball bat. That's what makes me think of. But then the materials, there's a lot more technology into the materials and stuff that you use with it. But your racket face is smaller, so your contact is closer, so it's usually easier to hit the ball. The ball is a little bit slower, so you have more time. So you find you can hit the ball, and you can hit it a little bit harder without it pinging as far away. Whereas in tennis, if you hit that ball too hard, it is going for miles. Whereas in paddle, you can hit the ball quite hard, and it doesn't travel quite as far. And if it does, it's just going to hit off the back glass anyway, so it doesn't really matter because you can pick it up and go again.
How would you compare paddle to pickleball?
This will be for the tennis. The tennis players might agree with me on this. Probably controversial. I think pickleball is an easier version of tennis. I think it's a sport that carries over attributes, but requires some less skill set to tennis in some ways. The way the ball moves, the speed of it, it's easier to pick up in a lot of ways. Whereas I feel like Padel has its own technical, tactical game, which is quite different. Played both. I didn't mind playing pickleball. It was fun. It was fun, but I didn't get that feeling that Padel gave. Like, I played Padel for the first time. Me and my friends played. We went to a court in Middlesbrough, and then my friend was over in Spain, and he was in a racket shop, and he was like, "I'm in Barcelona, and I'm in a Padel racket store." He's like, "Should we just buy some rackets?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "We played once." "Yeah, okay. What racket do you want?" I was like, "That one looks mint." I spent like £250 on a racket. I played once. I was like, "I'm going to play this sport." And I've never been that committed into something so quick. But I enjoyed it so much of one time playing in the cold that I was like, "Yeah, no, this is for me." So he came back from Barcelona with a fresh paddle racket for us, and we played like 2 days later.
Because what you're doing now, you're effectively helping people identify their problems, not so much about the game itself, but when it comes to mobility and function and how you can help them. And I'm right in saying you are a physio by trade, aren't you?
Yeah, so my background is I'm a physiotherapist. I've got a special interest in strength and conditioning. So my other name will come across as find and function. And I created that name for myself as a concept of function is your ability to do things. So the function of your ability to play paddle is, do you have the attributes? Do you have the movement qualities? Do you have the skills in order to play the sport? That doesn't come down to technique. It comes down to your body's ability to achieve them tasks. So the way I now present myself is physiotherapy is my degree. So I have the ability to diagnose and assess and treat. But actually the important bit from it is, can you move well enough to achieve the task you want to do? So function for me is, what do you want to do? So now I've put that into the field of paddle. People who love to play paddle, it's like, how can I keep you on the court? And how can you do things to build up your skill set to be better on the court, to move better on the court, and to have the longevity that if you want to play 6 times a week, because you can play 6 times a week, you have the tolerance in your body to actually handle it. It's like the function on the paddle court is, can you get deep enough to pick up a ball from the ground? Can you smash it overhead? Can you run around, change direction? They're all skill sets that you need to do. But there's a little crossover between physiotherapy and strength and conditioning, which kind of blends that all together.
So when you take someone through that journey, Brent, in regards to being able to help them perform the game of paddle better, if you like, is that something that would typically cross over into everyday life as well? So typically, the better you are at paddle, you can probably move better in real life.
Oh, big time. I think sport is an expression of movement, whatever sport that is. And if your ability to move, if you want to pick up your kids from the floor and you have the mobility into your hips, knees, ankles, all that type of thing, that would carry over to you being able to get down and hit a ball on the ground. But what you'll find is a lot of people, they maybe don't see that crossover of, I need to do these exercises to change my day-to-day life. But you put that element of sport into it, and it's like, you're going to hit a ball further in golf. All right, I'm going to do that exercise. You're going to be able to get that ball which was too low and it went past you. It's like, all right, I might do these exercises before I play, which carries over. So people can often build skill sets of movement that will naturally transfer into sport. But as a byproduct, things like racket sports improve cognitive function. They improve mental health because of the social aspects. But actually, from bigger factor, they reduce cardiovascular risks, or your risks of heart attack reduces from doing cardiovascular exercise, but you're doing it in a fun way. It improves bone health, bone density, because you're putting positive loads through the joints. So actually, for people, it has massive benefits to their actual physical health and mental health. Just as a byproduct, you're having fun, you're socialising, but your risk of more sinister things, like dying, genuinely you have a reduced risk of mortality from playing sports like racket sports. So there's all these positive benefits that you can get by just going and having a knockabout with your mates and having fun.
So if you play paddle, you've got less chance of dying.
That is a shown, researched, not direct for paddle, but racket sports. Racket sports and cardiovascular exercise have shown to reduce your risk of mortality.
That's fucking mind-blowing.
Mad.
I'm clipping that up for a
Yeah,
reel.
yeah.
That's why I asked you. I want to unpick a little bit as to why you got into the world of physio. Was it something that you dealt with, or family members or something like that? Because what's the urgency to want to to become a physio? Is that just something you picked where you thought financially it'd be rewarding, or was it something that you had a genuine interest since you were young?
Definitely not for the financial side. I always recommend now, if people want to make money, healthcare is probably not the world for you. My exposure to physio came from injuries myself. So I played sport when I was younger. I had back issues and I had a recurrent couple of problems. And I'd had exposure to physio in a couple of different settings. And I met a physio who helped me and treated me on my journey for my back. And I thought he was a nice guy. We had engaging conversations. He listened to me and he put me on a pathway which allowed me to get back to doing what I wanted to do. So inevitably, my exposure through physio was somebody who gave me the opportunity to get back into sport. So I had pain which limited me from playing sport. I underwent physio, we did some strength training, we did some movement work, and I got back to playing. And I thought, when I was deciding what I was wanting to do at university, I originally thought I wanted to be a teacher. And one of my college lecturers encouraged me not to go into teaching. And I don't think that was a bad thing. They just said they think it might be more suited to physio. On reflection, my anatomy was appalling. I think I got about 20% on my exam at college. I went back and did a talk, and my scores were awful. But my interest hadn't been sparked in the right way, whereas now I'm absolute nerd. And I'm proud, I love it. I love the fact that I'm so interested in biomechanics and movement, because I can have big positive effects on people's lives just by maybe it's moving the hip a little bit better. And then things have big carryover. But that all came from, I had a positive experience with a good physio. Sometimes in the modern world, people don't always have positive experiences with physio. And I think that's partially down to exposure, timing, and maybe we have systemic issues which maybe have poor experiences with healthcare services. But when you have a positive experience for me, it's one of the most rewarding professions. I get people out of pain. I get them to do the things they want to do consistently and have positive effects on people's lives. How many people get to finish their day and go, I've made 7 people's lives better today? Like, it's quite a powerful thing to do.
Can you draw on any examples of that when someone's came in absolutely crippled and you've helped them?
Even just this week, I've got multiple through. There's often, you'll have patients, as anyone in any field of work, you'll have moments which really stick and resonate. And I can look back to having a patient who was stood outside the door in tears. They weren't able to sit down just because of the level of back pain that they had raging leg pain, and they had like a large nerve irritation. But their exposure to their GP wasn't great. They hadn't been listened to. They'd been told that they'd had a crumbling spine and they'd had quite negative connotations and language into movement. So they were petrified to move. They didn't want to sit down because they thought their back might break. Well, the language which was used had this negative effect into how they thought. But when we went through their imagery, we sat down, we talked through it, we went through meaningful things that were going to impact their life. Like, what did the pain stop them doing? And we found ways to change how they moved. By the end of that session, he was able to touch his toes. He was relatively pain-free. He was able to sit down, get out of the chair with mild discomfort. Yes, there was still some tension or soreness, but his fear avoidance for movement, which he'd had for about 6 months, had considerably changed in that hour. Now, that's not to say that I've got magic hands or I've done anything globally for treatment, but we were able to pinpoint why he was so scared to move, what tissues were involved, and have some impact into changing them. So he came in and, we talked about mental health and the spiral he was on. And by the end of the session, we had a hug, a pair of us were close to tears, and I just think his exposure was lucky that we resonated well and he trusted me to be able to help him on his journey. He allowed me to do some treatment, we did some movement, and he had the confidence in his own body afterwards that he could make a change. But that comes from, it's a lot of trust. And I was just lucky enough that I've gone through a similar experience and I could partially explain a little bit of my experience and showcase where I am now. And he was grand.
Because I know that a lot of people do have bad relationships with their GPs and stuff like that, and good ones, of course, but I'm a massive advocate for people like yourself who are specialised or almost nerdy in their field, because, a GP, 9 times out of 10, they're going to probably tell you to mask the pain with drugs or whatever, and I understand the kind of business element, why they would do that. Do you find that you butt heads with doctors, GPs, etc.?
So there's a mixture of this concept of collaborative working and hierarchies and systems. GPs are a generalised practitioner, so they need to know a lot about a lot of things. What you find with a lot of GPs is sometimes their exposure to some conditions, their knowledge base may be a little bit different to where mine would be. And that's just because I specialise into musculoskeletal injuries. So if I see somebody who's got a musculoskeletal injury, I've got a skill set that I'm very confident into. That's my little niche. But also sometimes people can present with back pain and they could have gallstones. So the GP generally is not too concerned as much about, let's say, a muscle spasm than a sinister pathology. So the real goal of the GP is, do we need to escalate this further? Is there something really nasty going on that I can save your life for? If you've got muscular pain, yes, it does affect your life, but on the grand scale of things, they don't need to escalate it and send you to hospital because there's something really more like nasty that they need to protect. There's also the world of, we can get you into other services and we can reduce the pain. Pain relief can work quite well. It's just like, I would say it's a different level of hierarchy. That's why the GPs need to be so specialised, and sometimes maybe it's a little bit cutthroat because it's not that sinister pathology they need to escalate. But because you go in with that experience wanting help, that crossover of communication sometimes gets broken down. And it's not that the GP doesn't want to help, it's just more so they have this toolbox and maybe you don't fit in that toolbox. And then if you get referred into, say, the likes of me, I have my toolbox. Great, if you fit in my toolbox, I can help. But again, if you come to see me with back pain and it turns out you've got kidney stones, my toolbox doesn't fix kidney stones, so I'm going to be like, we need you to see the GP. So effective communication, sometimes expectations and like meeting expectations can be a challenge. And it is just trying to find that balance of, hopefully you get a bit of luck that you resonate with your clinician. And sometimes, you just don't. And it's not that that all GPs are poor. It may just be that you weren't able to communicate in both directions to get the outcome that you wanted.
So if someone has got back pain, how do they know whether to see yourself or a doctor? Or how do they even know if it's back pain or not?
Generally, I would always look back to the mechanism. If you've had a mechanism of injury and you've had a justification as to why something's hurt, you've bent over to pick something up and then your back's went. Grand, you have logical reason to why you've irritated structure or you've hurt or created trauma, then my job, that makes perfect sense. You've got a muscular injury, you've done something to create the pain. If someone's got massive weight loss, they've also started getting back pain, but they started getting headaches and they started getting other things going on as well. And it's been coming on over a period of time, or something's changed, which is a little bit out of the normal. That's when I'd always be, you want to see a GP. So the doctors is when we think it's maybe a little bit more medicalised because there's not rationale, there's no logic behind it. The GP is going to clear sinister pathologies. If you've done something in the gym or you've exercised, you've picked something up, you've sneezed and your back's went, and you have a logical reason and you have a kind of time frame it's gone on, physio is always going to be the best place.
Do you ever get it wrong?
Yes. I think in all fields of life, we learn from mistakes. The way I tend to work is I have a working hypothesis, which means I might have 3 differential diagnoses at one time because there might be multiple things going on at that same time. It's not, you have this one problem, this is the one answer. It can be, these are the components we found, this is what we're going to change. And we work with it. So my diagnosis may change, but I've got a working hypothesis through that I know that there might be 3 different possibilities and I'm going to look to influence them all rather than this is exactly what it is, this is the one thing you do. We work it out collaboratively. And yeah, definitely get it wrong. I think I can reflect on things I've maybe missed. I could have asked better questions. People have presented with symptoms which have been very logical and mechanical, and they have had more sinister pathologies, and they've gone for further imagery. And to me, on paper, they didn't showcase that. And then they've gone for a scan, and there's been something more serious go on. And you can't help but sit there and go, how did I miss that? Should I have looked more into it? How do I get better? But for me now, 13 years into my career, that gives me that same hunger as every time I see somebody, I ask that question. What else could it be? Like, why? Why do you have pain? Why does that hurt now? And if I can't give a logical rationale, I want to escalate that to go, is there something more? Could I have missed something? And I think that's the hunger that keeps you in ready to be better as a clinician. But also, it is one of the ways that we do pick up sinister pathologies. I will see people who have nasty things going on. And it's not that, people have it and it does. People have back pain and there can be more nasty things going on. Not all the time. But if you're not thinking there, I never want to have one slip through the cracks. So I'm always going to be thinking and asking question after question, what else is going on, just to make sure. And then if I get concerns, this is what GPs are for. They can escalate and look and do more.
I appreciate your honesty, mate. I think that's quite refreshing for people to hear, to be fair, because I was hoping you said that, because I'm thinking, surely, I mean, in my job, I get things wrong all the time. So to hear that from yourself is quite nice. I think, not knocking the any kind of GP, but I think a lot of them would never try and take that, we've got it wrong. They want to try and do everything, just take these drugs, do this, do that. When people come to see you, what is the most common problem that people have?
In private practice, so generally in my clinic base, you tend to see very similar trends. So you'll see back pain, neck pain, knee pain are probably the most common. And they're just things that trigger more regularly in people. And I think other injuries and conditions, people can manage a lot better. But the ones which seem to debilitate people and limit their quality of life more, back pain can have a vast effect. If you can't put your shoes and socks on, you can't get out of bed. Like, people want to escalate and do something to change that. Whereas let's say someone has finger pain, thigh pain, they can crack on and get on with most things in life. They maybe won't push to seek advice to help into it. So I'm generally seeing they're more common conditions. And then when it comes into sport, so say Padel has specific conditions you will see at certain times. So elbow pain, shoulder pain, back pain are the biggest contributors, more so in pro level. And then more amateur, you'll see a lot more calf and Achilles and knee pains and elbow pains. And a lot of that is people get so excited and they love playing and they play so much that their body just doesn't have the tolerance to play. So they overload some of these tissues and it gets wound up because it just doesn't have the strength and the capacity to do it. And then they're like, oh, I need to stop playing. And they stop playing for a couple of weeks and it feels a bit better. They get back on court, play 5 games again in the week, and then it's sore again. So then, you'll find in certain population groups, you'll just get trends.
The reason I was laughing, mate, I just want to ask you, it's just come to my head, probably a bit unprofessional, is wanker's cramp a thing?
Do you know what? Nobody's ever come to see me for that.
Have they not?
But it could be a thing. People come and say they got tennis elbow, so you never know. Like, what extra?
What's the most peculiar thing someone's came to you with where you've been like, whoa, what, never... Is it genuinely always another day at the office? Or is it, as you say, the trends are like back pain, maybe hip mobility, this, posture?
The mechanism of injury. So for me, people will present with certain types of pain, but I always want to know why. So why did that come on from? And like, people will go, oh yeah, and they'll talk little things. And then, when people start to build trust, and like, I'm never going to say names or anything to it, but people will come in and say like the mechanism they've had it. And sometimes, maybe it's my face, people feel like you can tell me their deep, dark secrets. And like, the stories is to, let's say, inappropriate scenarios where people are getting a bit busy, and then that's when an injury's come on. Like, some of them stories, I just go pink. But it's crack up because I love that they can tell me and that's how it happened.
Yeah.
But to start with, they'll go, I was just getting out the car, my back hurt. 20 minutes down into the conversation, like, me, my other half. And I'm like, all right, I know where that's come from.
That's mad.
But some stories, you get some fun stuff.
Have you ever thought about, I mean, you may do it, maybe he's collaborating with, like, not necessarily Medichecks, but some kind of blood analysis clinic or something where you could maybe take things or diagnose things a little bit further yourself without the referral of a GP?
So there's a lot of self-accessible, like, self-blood work you can do now, driver, things like that. What I tend to find is the skill set that a GP has can look on the broader spectrum. So the concept of zooming out to zoom in is how I look at life and how I work in practice. We want to see a big picture of everything before we go directly into that area. So let's say someone has knee pain. Firstly, we want to look big picture to see, is there anything else going on? Do you present like you may have something more serious going on, or is it just mechanical pain from the knee? So with your bloods, you can go really direct and look to see, okay, your vitamin C markers are off. Okay, we need to supplement vitamin C. Question for me is why? Why are your vitamin C low? What else is there going on? So that's what you tend to find, that your clinicians have that knowledge base to understand that further. Some of these private companies, they can do a lot of that, but maybe they don't have the correlation into the rest of your medical history. So I think this is where the medical world is going to change. It's just, can we blend the systems a bit better? But for me as a clinician, it probably doesn't have as much value unless if I see someone who I think blood works off, I'm probably thinking that they have an inflammatory condition, whereas I'd want that to be medically managed by a GP anyway. So if they get their bloods and it showcases something, that information might get them the answer quicker. So it's like they could take their self-bloods, but they're still going to need to see their GP anyway.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, so you're always better for that kind of second anyway, aren't you? With Padel itself, Brent, I know that if you're in something, things always feel saturated. Like, as a videographer, I feel like everybody's creating content. Step outside that domain, actually, you're still one of the elite, like, select few people who are doing it. With yourself and with Padel, is it early? Is it early days? I know the trajectory is going to be massive for the sport, certainly in the UK. Or is it something that it's already a big sport and just the people of the UK don't actually know about it?
If you don't know by now, I run a business called The Content PT. I create content for influencers, PTs, online coaches and fitness brands all around the world. So if you are someone who's in need for sexy content for your social media, or you really want to maintain a competitive edge in your industry, drop me a DM on Instagram.
Padel's growth is huge worldwide. It's had booms in certain countries and then calmed down a little bit.
It's big in Spain, wasn't it?
Spain and Argentina is where it's been biggest from. When you look at the top players in the world, a heavy majority of them are Spanish and Argentinian, and they've had clubs and courts for decades. It's a very young sport in the UK. However, its growth is very fast. It's definitely not saturated yet, because there's just an abundance of opportunity and there's more and more people. I talk about Padel every day. Like, sometimes I look at my personality and think, is my personality just turned into Padel? And the amount of people who love Padel, you'll hear that's all they seem to talk about. It's like, what you're doing, Padel, running a marathon, doing a high rocks, having a baby. Like, that's currently where the world of everyone I seem to know tends to be doing one of them things. But if I had to look to it around the exposure and opportunity for it, it's still so young. We don't have fully developed performance pathways for elite level of sport. That's all new starting to come into it. We have new tournaments that are developing, but they've only been established for the last few years. There's been some that have been going for a little bit longer, and now we've got a couple of newer ones that are building through. So we're getting higher level of athletes, we're getting more prize money, there's more high level elite sport coming in, which means it's only going to have to develop through grassroots. But because it's not been established for a long time, there's just so much more opportunity. So you're seeing clubs pop up everywhere, and you're going to see more and more clubs build up into areas. But if clubs have only got a few courts, there's still opportunity for more and more. And as that grows, more and more people hear about it, more people get to play. There's many people who've never heard of it. And in my day-to-day clinic, people are like, what are you doing at the weekend? I'm like, I'm going down to London, I'm working a tournament. And I was like, it's to do with Padel. And they're like, what's that? Is that canoeing? Whereas actually, in certain age groups, it's very trendy, but we're just going to see that continue to blow out because there's so many age groups who actually don't know it exists.
Because, well, that's the thing, isn't it? I know when we did that work with Jason Manford and that, I remember he was saying it was about the fact that he is trying to make it more accessible to young people, which is phenomenal, to be fair. But as you say, in turn, the more people that play it, the price should come down anyway, shouldn't it?
Hopefully.
For people who don't know, Brent, how much is it in the UK? In the Northeast, because that's where the majority of listeners and viewers are from. How much is it to play?
So you pay for your square on the court. So you have 4 people who play. So you would have the court fee and then it's divided by 4. You generally have peak times and off-peak times, so it'll be a bit cheaper during off-peak times and a bit more expensive like in the prime times. So it can fluctuate between like £9 and £14 roughly for about 90 minutes per person into it.
And do you need 4 people?
You need 4 people.
You can't, because I know that have I seen...
You can play singles, so there is courts that have singles courts, but generally the established sport would need 4 players because it would be set in as doubles.
So again, I'm just asking curious questions here, Brent. So forgive me ignorance. The elite level players, would they typically, or the people who are good at paddle, have they typically came from a tennis background?
There's a mixture. There is some players who've come from a tennis background. There's some players who've had no racket sport experience at all, but they've got into paddle and they've got quite hooked. In the UK, my exposure of what I've seen is some of the players who've played for longer have had exposure in the likes of Spain, and they've had a longer duration of playing over there where that's a sport that some of the kids go into first. So there's some players that have never played tennis who've only played paddle. So you can see often in the way they play, they have quite a different playing style, where some attributes from tennis carry over, but there's a lot of negative attributes as you get better from tennis style of play compared to paddle. So tennis is still a bigger sport of access and players, but paddle's now already starting to overtake the likes of squash and badminton for user play. So there's more paddle players than some of the other racket sports now.
So you think from a demographic point of view or an age range, do you think is there a particular age range which would be, I know you've said kind of from young to the 80s and stuff, but would it be fair to say that anybody really can become unbelievable at the sport and do well?
Yeah. Because the level of your skill development in the sport, it's a very fast learning curve. So you get better quickly. But because the court size is smaller and there's more tactical components into it, your overpower strength isn't the biggest attribute. So you don't need to be the most fit and powerful player. As you get better, yes, them attributes do help. But the tactical component means you can play it into your 80s and you can whip someone who's fit and can run around because you've put them in positions for you to orchestrate the point and be in to win. So there's a lot of intelligence into the game as well, which is what allows you to have these different levels on the spectrum. So people can take it up at any age. There's some ex-tennis pros who've took it up in their 80s, and you're seeing them hitting balls and they just look phenomenal. They're just so comfortable.
Because I remember when I first ever played, I mean, I'm not a veteran but when I first ever played, I remember just thinking of tennis and all I wanted to do was just whack it as hard as I could. Just trying to hit that top spin and all that. And it's like when you actually realise that it's more about pace and taking things slow and the lob and all that type of stuff. What attributes would you say is required to make a good paddle player? So for someone watching, they might think, right, well, I've got that. What would you say?
Movement and shot selection are the two probably the simplest parts. If you can move forwards, backwards, side and side well, you'll be able to set yourself in a position to prepare early. It's a game of preparation and patience. So I would probably cross the two over saying compared to checkers and chess. Chess is a longer game and you need strategy for you to make the right decisions at the right time. Whereas, let's say in tennis, you could hit a winner from anywhere. You could be pushed in the far corner and you've got no option, but you could hit a winner and you can win that point. Paddle, you need to prepare. It might take you 3-4 good shots to put you in the position for the perfect shot. So patience, thought process is massive. The athletic qualities, you need to be able to move consistently forwards and back in deep positions to smash. There's a lot of athleticism, but that athleticism is lost if you don't have the patience to make the right decision.
Because you do see a lot of out-of-shape people playing the sport, don't you? So you don't necessarily even need to be...
You don't need to be super fit to start. No. As the standard gets higher, that level of fitness definitely shoots up again.
Why, though? If you're not required to move any quicker?
Because you have to move quicker as the standard gets better. So
but if you can put them in the positions, why do you need to move quicker?
Because you want to prepare earlier. So you want to be in the right place to make the right shot. So if you're not as fit, you'll get dragged out of position. So I could play 3 shots and make you struggle into a position, then you're going to give me an easy shot to make the win.
Right,
so
I'm with you.
You can still get balls back and you can still be involved. But when it comes to the final shot of who wins that point, when you don't have the fitness, we can put you out of position and then we can finish it off.
How does is there like a governing body for this? Because I know that obviously you've got LTA with tennis and stuff like that, and paddle just, to me, as much as I love it myself, I think it's brilliant, and this is why I brought you on, it's fucking interesting. It feels like it's not a real sport. Like, it feels like there's just a few people with cash knocking up paddle courts, overpriced for a big game of squash. That's how it feels. I know it's not that, but what is the like hierarchy to the sport, and who are the top league? Like, breaking it down.
So in Spain is where most of the highest level of tournaments are. The International Padel Federation, they're the governing body for paddle, and that looks at it across continent. In the UK, the LTA is playing a major role in developing into the sport, and then you can have more individualized tournaments who are run by directors as well. What you'll tend to find is that governing bodies, it's this international federation, and then they'll have their FIP tournaments, which is the elite level tournaments and standards. But if you want to play like a graded tournament where you're playing competitive level, you will have LTA standard tournaments, but you've also got the Adidas Hop Tour, and they provide tournaments. You've got the British Padel Tour, and then you've got R3, and they're kind of the major tournament providers. And then if you're going into the higher levels, it will be International Padel Federation standard, and they've got guidelines of expectations, and then they have what you need to do to provide a tournament of that level, whether that's prize money, facilities, the likes of me. If they have a physiotherapist, they have sports masseurs. If you're going to have a tournament of that standard, you need to provide these services, and it needs to be done this way. So they're the governing body to put it that way. We have had a FIP level tournament in the UK, and there is more to come. So we'll see more of that governing body showcasing the elite level. It's just young in the UK.
And what are the rules like? Are they just tennis?
The scoring rules are the same as tennis. So
Right,
you would have the same points of 15, 30, 40 game. But then you have the rules of what's played on the court. So I often look to it as it's like you have a tennis court on the ground, and then it's surrounded by the walls that you then can use to either your advantage or that they can make more of a challenge. But the ball still has to bounce onto the court first before anything else can happen. But it would follow the same scoring rules as tennis.
And what about the service? Isn't that different?
So the serves have underarm serve, and you have to drop the ball from hip height. I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. Fucking hope you're right.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Because I think you told us a bit, didn't you? And even I was thinking, fucking hell, like that fitness element for me, I felt like I was blown out my arse playing, and I thought, as much as anybody can get into it, I feel like you've always got to be matched in that sport. You know what I mean? Like in football, because it's a team sport, you can be kind of shit, but if you've got a few good lads around you, you can kind of get through the game and still have fun. With that, if you're playing someone good, you're going to know about it quick, aren't you? It's not like one of them things where you've got a chance.
See, I think that's the difference with padel. You could play with really good players and you can still get the ball back. They can probably just put more shots together to finish it off more comfortably, and they've prepared earlier, so they're much more comfortable. So they can have you running around the court, but you can still be getting them back. So you always feel like you have a chance. And I think that's why I enjoy it so much, is that I can play with players significantly better than me, but I'm still getting some of these balls back. I'm still into a rally. I still have a chance. And if they make a mistake, I can win that point. So you never feel like it's over because it can bounce off the glass. The point is never really over until something's finished. Whereas in tennis, the ball goes past you, that's the point over. Well, the ball goes past you in padel, it's going to bounce off the glass a lot of the time. Well, you can pick it back up after the glass and continue the point. So you'll have shots where you think, it's dead and buried, and it's gone back in, and your opponent's won the point. So it never feels like it's over.
Because with the sport being in its infancy, Brent, I get your background. Why didn't you become a coach in it? I'd understand if it was like another sport. It's like, well, I haven't done the sport to that level, then maybe he's going to coaching. But at the same time, you clearly love playing it. You're passionate about it. Great knowledge on it. Understand movement, mobility, function. You've got that expertise. So you've got one up on a lot of other... I'm assuming a lot of coaches can't delve as deep as what you can. Would it provide a better lifestyle? You can be on the court more. What's the reason you didn't go down that route?
Mixture of both ways. I'm actually going to do the LTA paddle coaching. So I am going to become a paddle coach.
Right, okay.
More so because I just want to have more exposure in the development of the sport, because I love change and movement. So the skill set of moving better to do the technical component. So from a physio and a movement standpoint, I can give people the attributes that make them move better to do the technical component of their sport. So I'm not going to give a golfer technical advice in their swing, but what I can say is if we can get your hip to rotate better, you're going to be able to turn further, which should be able to impact the quality of your swing. Well, I'm not trying to coach them in the technical part, because that's a whole new world. So you'll find very good coaches have had a lot of exposure and a lot of time. I don't have the technical ability as of yet into that, whereas if you've had kids who've come through the sport, ex-pros, who they really understand the technical components, the tactical components, all that skill set of the sport, that's a whole other ball game. But what I can do is give you the movement quality to be better in them technical components. So if you can't hit a smash, because you don't have the shoulder mobility. You can practice the smash till you're blue in the face, but if we just give you some better movement in your shoulder, it's going to be easier to achieve that task. So I've got a little position in the market that I can really add value to it, but I can work together with coaches who can do that technical component because that's the specialist in their field.
So right now with the Padel physio, that's what you do. That's how you complement that industry by effectively helping them perform via mobility.
So currently my role is I provide physio with most of the major tournaments in the UK, and I'll provide on-court and kind of like back office, backroom support for the players, whether that's for injury treatment, on-court treatment, or preparation, so your sports massage and your recovery. I'm there to provide a service to the players to keep them on court. So that can be me running onto court to deal with an acute injury where a player's run outside the court, they've bashed their leg and split their knee open. We need to stop the bleeding, we need to compress it, and we need to use that within the time guidelines to get them back on court. Or a player maybe just overstretched, pulled a muscle, we need to treat it to be able to get them back into the next match. And then it can also be the fact of played 3 matches, we've got matches tomorrow, we're going to do some recovery work and do some treatment to help them get to there. So my job is to keep the pros on court and performing to their best of their ability, just within the guidelines that we're allowed.
I wanted to ask you about your business journey, Brent, because obviously I've known you over the years and I've seen you bounce around different facilities and do your own thing, and you're on your social medias and all that type of stuff. What would you say has been the hardest part of your journey building a business?
I think the hardest part for me is knowing what I really want. I know what I enjoy, and I know what difference I like to make to people. I like to help people get out of pain. I like to improve their quality of life to give them what they want to do. The biggest bit is how do I make that on a bigger scale that I can help more people? And do I keep that into a specific niche? So the Padel physio, I love it. I work with some of the best players in the UK, now starting to be some of the best players in the world. And I'm letting them do what they want to do, and it's the high stakes because they're elite athletes. But on the other factor, I have patients who've, they've hurt their back and they can't get their kid out the back of the car because the pain is limiting so much. All they want to do is to be able to roll around on the floor and play games with the kids. The impact I have on them has a huge difference to their life. So I get torn between this high level of performance-based model, which is the nitty-gritty fine details of biomechanics, but on the other factor, I can change someone's quality of life that actually could change the whole feeling of their life. So finding a balance between being able to do a bit of both. Like I'll always want to be able to help people who were, say, in my position, who had pain, who didn't have answers, who struggled to make differences. And then now I can train, I can do everything I wanted to. I have no fear of movement, I can lift, I can train, I have the luxury, and I'm able to do anything I want to with no fear.
How do you be that specific though? Because if you're looking at helping someone maybe reach for a shot that's low, and you're trying to just improve that thing instead of, as you say, if they drill it until they're blue in the face, without that being able to perform that movement, they can't do it. How do you then serve those people who just want to pick the kids up?
So movement's quite simple. Our body, I often explain things into, the brain looks at movement into 3 components, and it's do no harm. It wants to protect itself from further damage. So whether that's creating spasm, it's avoidance, it's stiffness, your brain will protect yourself from doing further harm. Second one is don't look stupid. Like your brain will protect you from putting yourself in vulnerable positions. So if you've got a muscle that's tight and stiff, it will protect you from falling flat on your face. So you will have these reflexes and guarding areas to do it. And then the final one's achieve the task. Well, if we follow them rules of movement, that can carry over to picking up something from the floor, or running a marathon, or to hit a ball overhead. Your goal is to achieve that task without doing further harm or without looking stupid. So we put them context into, we just build the movement strategies, or the strength, or the coordination, the rhythm, the timing. We give your body the ability just to achieve that task. And then that's just scalable. So you can take that down to the smallest difference. If someone needs a little bit more ability to lean forwards to touch their toes, because bending at the trunk a little bit more allows them to brush their teeth in the morning without pain. But in that same setting, if that person can't flex their ribcage, that could be the same skill set that limits somebody from bending over to reach a low ball in paddle. So it's just a spectrum of ability. Good movement is good movement. And whether that comes down to whatever your task is, if you can move well and you can achieve movements, that's going to serve you to whatever you want to do.
Well, here's a random one for you. I always get cramp in my toe all the time. Like, all the time. What is cramp?
Cramp is overstimulation of a muscle. So we can look that into a couple of ways. Sometimes it's because there's not the resources in that tissue. So historically, I would say it's down to a deficiency. I'll often look at cramp as a muscle which is overstimulated because it's unable to do the task it's meant to do. So if you're always getting cramp in the toe, why are the toe flexors working so hard, would be my question. What doesn't move well enough? Can you not absorb? Can you not take weight into that leg as well as you could do? Do you grip your foot into your shoe to help you generate propulsion to walk forwards? So cramp's often just an area which is weak, or it's can't tolerate that stimulus, or often it's an overworked area of tissue.
But what is it though? Like, what's actually happening when you experience cramp?
It's excessive muscular contraction.
Just involuntary.
Yeah.
It's mad, that. I know it sounds mad. In the morning, I always get it in my right foot, in my middle toe. I always get cramp. It's weird, and it puts in agony.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it is what it is. And then after 10 minutes, it's gone.
So then this is where I like looking down into the mechanics. Is the question why we look to see is, does your foot move well? Does your hip move well? Does your back move well? The nerve that follows down from the back down into the leg, is there some tension in the nerve? Does it not move as well in the hip as it could do? Do you have an inability to flatten the foot as well as it could do? And the way you move in the day will impact how you rest at night. So if you've got a big toe that's gripping onto the floor all day during the day, and then you rest on night time, in the morning, if I walked around tensing my arm all day and I've got a stiff elbow, you go, stop trying to flex your biceps.
I know.
No wonder it's stiff.
See, the thing is, you can look at it to the nth degree, can't you? Because it's like, when do you know? In fact, that's a good question I'd ask you. When do you know when you need a Brent in your life? Like, when do you know when you? Because that cramp it's not debilitating. I'm not like, I just get on with it. I'd rather it not be there. But would I pay X amount of money to see someone about it every week to diagnose a problem? Probably not. So then, is it even a problem, or is it only a problem when it's actually causing you it's affecting your life? Or do you find that people just who've got a few quid and gone, I want to check that out?
You always need a Brent in your life.
Fucking hell.
Simple
Hi, David
answer.
Brent.
You it comes down to, I suppose, what you value. So I'll often have this with people when they seeking private help with physio, when there's an NHS service you can see. If you have the access and ability, say the likes of me, I have a specialist interest in certain areas, I might be able to influence some things that other clinicians have a different skill set for. But also, if it limits your life into a way that you want to make a change, that's when you seek advice. Generally, I think that pain is common, but it's not normal. You don't have to have pain. But have you been given the right intervention, the right exposure, the right advice to change it? So for some people, they maybe have had old-fashioned advice that they've just got arthritis, that's why they have pain. Arthritis is a degenerative process, but it doesn't correlate to pain. You could have a small degenerative change and be in agony, and you could have a really degenerative joint and be pain-free. So then that diagnosis doesn't correlate to your level of pain. If you've ever had a paper cut's knack, and you look at it and you think, why am I so soft? Why am I delicate? It's a bloody paper cut. But you've got lots of nerve endings in your fingers. So your brain's perception of that area for pain is highly sensitized. So it'll give you a lot of pain. Structurally, it's a little scuff. It's not a lot of damage. But tell me it doesn't knack. I'm like, bloody kills. I'd much rather someone punches in the leg than have a paper cut. Because that difference of pain sensitivity. So then will it get better in time by itself? But if that big toe was stopping you from doing something of note, that's when you seek advice to change it. But you just have to look into, is the person you're going to see, do they have the skill set to give me what I want? If you're going to see a physio and you're getting manual therapy every week, you're not changing the problem. You've not addressed why something is happening. So physios, osteopaths, chiropractors, we have skill set. We learn manual therapies. We can do techniques. The technique is a tool to give us an outcome. It is not the outcome. So if we use that tool to teach something to move better, you then need to reinforce that by learning to move better. So I tend to say, if you've tried physio for a year and it's not worked, it's probably not going to work in another year of physio. you maybe need to try something different. But that doesn't mean physio as a profession hasn't worked. It just might mean that that approach hasn't worked for you. So if you've been doing hip strengthening exercises for months and your hip's still painful, probably the fact that hip exercise not doing anything. Maybe the reason your hip's tight is because your foot doesn't move very well. Can we zoom out to zoom in? So if we zoom out and we see here's all these things that are moving that we could change, that might give us more insight to where we actually need to change.
Do you find that people that hold more muscle are more prone to injury?
It's an interesting one. So generally, strength training is shown to be the biggest impact to help reduce injury risk. So if we were to look at strength training versus stretching, strength training is shown to have a bigger impact on reducing injury risk than stretching versus nothing. And what you can find from that is if hypertrophy was the perfect answer to all injuries, bodybuilders would never get hurt.
And they're always hurt. That's what I mean.
So the concept of overload is the difference into that. So strength training is great, but if you overload a tissue beyond its capacity, so if you think of building muscle as creating small trauma and tears for your body to repair itself and get bigger, that's basically you create micro trauma to create an adaptation and a change. If you create too much trauma, your body will protect itself and you'll create swelling, or you might overload a tissue and it irritates it. So then that can be your pain sensation. But pain can come from multiple factors. Pain is not just down to isolated damage. Pain can come down to emotional factors, psychosocial factors. It can be inflammatory. It can be neuropathic. It can be to do with joint actions. There's so many kind of larger elements to pain than just that site of pain. So solely strength training is a piece in the puzzle. But if all you do is strength train, but your diet's naff, and you don't have meaningful conversations, you've got stress, your stress bucket's full, you're using exercise as a stress strategy for your stress in life, you're using a physical stressor to try and deal with an emotional stress. Stress is stress. You can't differentiate which one you choose of the stress you enjoy. It will probably then lead to something being problematic. So often you can find with bodybuilders or people who do a lot of strength training, they train well, they just don't get good enough recovery.
So in short, I guess, if you can bench 100 kilo and that's your progressive overload, you're better off benching 80. So you can cause enough trauma to build muscle, but not too much to cause inflammation or problems down the line.
If you can work a muscle through its full range of motion and create stimulus throughout, you're going to get a benefit. If you're having to generate a lot of additional tension from other places, if your goal is to be a powerlifter and you want to lift a lot of weight, you will create strategies to get there. If you're trying to put on muscle mass and you're trying to get aesthetics, we want to create as much stress in that tissue. We want to create as much damage into that tissue with as little effort and load as possible. Whereas strength training is the opposite.
So really though...
So let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
In bodybuilding, you want to create as much stress and damage into the tissue with as little load as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I was going to say, so really in a way, training to failure is kind of bullshit. Because you're far better off training to failure with a lightweight. Because you still...
Your rep ranges vary. So you can put on muscle mass between 5 and 15 reps. So you can get into the nuance of all this.
Yeah,
like
I'm interested in all that. That's what I mean.
And what you'll find is it's the consistency. So if you can train over a longer training period, it takes years to put on muscle mass. For a muscle to change physiologically, it takes 6 weeks for that muscle to change tissue shape. So if we're looking to actually put on muscle mass, that's not going to happen in a few weeks. That's going to change over like macro cycles. Your micro cycles and your small amounts of things, yes, we can change, but progressive overload can come from the same weight at different tempo, pause reps. It can come from slow eccentrics. It can come from fast concentrics. We can use so many different variables rather than you just need to put that number up every week. So this is where often you'll find the concept of overload. People try and progress quickly, but how I say is the number goes up because you've developed the strength for that number to go up. You haven't got stronger to put that number up. You've earned the right. You've put the number up because you've got stronger.
Right, I'm with
so
you.
A lot of people think, I need to make that weight heavier for me to get stronger. No, you've earned the right to put that weight up because you are now stronger.
So effectively, the kind of ratios are still the same as you move up that scale of weight.
Yeah, you just need to find different variations. Strength training, and a lot of it's technical. You have your beginner gains. Why do you get beginner gains? You don't physiologically get stronger. You just get more coordinated. You learn the skill to do that movement, whether it's a press, it's a pull. Your weight numbers have gone up because you've become more competent in the movement. You haven't just suddenly got massive, you've just become more competent. So then as your training age gets higher, it's much harder for them numbers to go up because you're really competent in the movements. You're then just having to build that muscle size. But you speak to any well-established bodybuilders, they'll say it takes years to put on size.
He's a mad one for you, right? So I only learned this, well, hopefully it was right. I'm sure it is. When I was in Marbella last week, we did some breath work. And what they said is the leaner and more muscle you have is actually worse for your breathing.
Whoa.
And I was like blown away because the guy, when he was breathing in, and they were doing this technique called like a double breath. So they were breathing, you heard of all this, and they did the double breath and stuff. And the guy was, whether it was a genetic thing or whatever, but he was kind of struggling to hit. Basically, if you hold a bit more fat, you're getting a lot more in, which is better for the meditation and the breathwork stuff. So they were getting more from it. And what you found is all the people who had a bit more excess weight on them got more out of the session. And she said, this is something that's happened for years. And I was like, really? And the guy who was, I'm not mentioning his name, but the guy, he's very lean, football and background and stuff. But he didn't get as much from it as the fatter guys. And I thought, isn't that funny? Because if you've got a lot of muscle development on your abs, for instance, that actually can impair or affect your breathing. I don't know how much truth is that. I thought I'd ask you.
Oh, I could talk about breathing mechanics, physiology, biomechanics until literally blue in the face. It's one of the things that I'm very passionate about. Breathing influences everything. Like if we think, if a woman was to have a baby, they get them to go through breathing drills to help with her pain. They get them to do breathing exercises. You look at yoga, it's a form of breathing. You look at Pilates, it's a different form of breathing. You look at meditation, it's a form of breathing. Wim Hof, it's a form of breathing. You have all these different methodologies of breathing, but the one thing that comes back into it is, one, we breathe to survive. But we can use that to influence our physiology. We can use it to influence our biomechanics. If we let the rib cage move better, that influences how the shoulder girdle moves. It can influence how you digest your food. It influences you go on the toilet. Like, things you don't think about. Constipation can come from faulty breathing mechanics. Like, I literally say to people, you're full of shit. Why are you full of shit? Because you're in such a heightened, stressed pattern. Your diaphragm isn't mobilizing your guts and it's not helping stuff move through the system. So somebody who's in a stress state, if you've got strong, well-developed people and they're always stiff, tight and short, shallow breathing, bodybuilder walking up the stairs, gassed out, because actually breathing mechanics, they're holding stiffness and bracing all the time. They're not letting the rib cage move. The diaphragm isn't getting to go through its full range of opportunity. So it's going to create other stress patterns.
Do you go through all this when people are coming to see you?
So one of the biggest things I'll first
It's mad the level of depth you go to for something where ignorantly I would think, oh, I've got a bad back, aren't I, Brent? But when you start you start getting into breath work and all that, it's amazing, but quite frightening as well to think how many levels there is to this to try and diagnose something.
And this is where, if you want better answers, ask better questions. So for me as a clinician, that's what I'm looking at. If I've got a person sat in front of me right now, I've got ads, and I'm looking at him going, why is he holding himself in that position? Is something in pain? Is he stressed? And as we have a conversation, we'll talk about, yes, there's mechanical parts, but I'm like, what else is going on in life? Like, what do you do for work? What's your home situation? And if I find out that that person's got loads of stress going on and their body's in a constant, like, stress state, I will go through some simple breathing drills. Like, right, we're just going to go through 5 prolonged exhales, and I just want you to let the rib cage move. I won't go into the nitty gritty of we're trying to get the diaphragm to lengthen because it's going to have an influence on your back extensors and all the biomechanical bits. It can just be, at the minute, your whole system is really heightened for me to get the most out of this assessment. If we can just let things relax down a little bit, we'll probably find it's easier to have the conversation and your movement will look a bit better. Getting somebody to go through 3 full prolonged exhales could take them from getting their hands to their knees on a toe touch to literally being able to touch their toes. In a weekly basis, the amount of people who said, I haven't touched my toes in 10, 20 years, and what, I've just done a few breaths. I'm like, yeah, we just need your rib cage to move a bit better. It's some very, very simple stuff, makes massive differences. The complexities are good to know. Like, that knowledge helps me give simple stuff. But if somebody comes to me and I give them 10 exercises, they're going to do none. If I can give them one thing that has a meaningful influence into their life, the likelihood of them doing that is there. And this is where the art of therapy comes in. You need to know all these things. You need to know that you have sinister pathologies that can present with pain. But I don't need to tell every person that comes through my door, back pain could be because you've got a tumour. It's going to petrify them. But my notes, I'm like, okay, the red flags are clear. It doesn't indicate sinister pathologies. This presents like muscular stuff. All right, let's have a look to how they're moving. And if they then go through their history, I get to work out these pieces in the puzzle. But I just put the corners in the puzzle, fill bits around, and then people tell me the rest, and it just comes together. But this is the difference with collaborative working. So my job is, I'm not here to fix you, but I'm here to give you the tools to fix yourself. So find and function, kind of my thought process, that little wayfinder, and I'm a guide. Like I'm not magic, but your body has the ability to adapt and change. So if I put you in a scenario where your body has success and it's had a win and it doesn't hurt, you go in that scenario again, it feels good, you'll do that a third time. So your brain goes, oh yeah, I can lean over, it doesn't hurt anymore, I'll do it again. All of a sudden you do things you don't even think about. If something works well, you don't even think about it. So it's just trying to find the meaningful parts. And if I give somebody an exercise where they do a long breath and they reach the hands and it just relaxes their back, that could be the difference of that person getting out of a chair pain-free or not. And all they did was take a long breath. How many people don't have time to do exercises? I'm really busy, can't do rehab exercises. Before you get out of the chair, do a long exhale, just wanting to let the ribs drop, let everything relax. And then you go into exhale as you stand. Like, my back didn't hurt as I stood up. I'm like, cool. Next time you go to get up, just do a couple of reps of that. And literally in a week, someone could have had pain which has been limiting them for months. And it's like, is it that simple? I'm like, yeah. Your exercises are simple. There's complex reasoning, but the art of good coaching is you make something so easy that people get it. They don't have to think about it. It just happens.
Got two more questions for you, Brent. The first one is, are chiropractors full of shit? Because I see loads of videos where they're cracking necks and all kinds of stuff, and I think, I want that. That's what I want. And even when I crack my own back or I get elastic, I love the feeling of it. But when I see it and they pull a neck, I'm thinking, that can't be good. And is the sound even real? What's the truth in that?
So, movement professionals as a whole, you will get some good ones and you'll get some who maybe aren't as competent. Chiropractors have a reputation because they do a lot of joint adjustments. But you have some chiropractors who are absolutely phenomenal. One of my biggest mentors through my career was a chiropractor by background, but his approach wasn't joint manipulation. It was about changing how people move, and it was about how the nervous system interacts into movement. So coming from a physio, and someone's like, I've been seeing a chiropractor and it hasn't worked. I'll say that methodology hasn't worked. So the adjustments, your body maybe doesn't need the adjustments, it needs to move differently. But it's the same as you could have a physio who tries to massage a muscle and it hasn't changed. Well, the thing that changes is how your brain perceives that area. So chiropractors, their methodology often has like repeat appointments for joint manipulations because that's just the theory of how the joint manipulation work. But if we want to make a meaningful change into movement, your body has to adapt and change. So if you have an external stimulus that's doing it for you, it's not going to stick. You could do an adjustment and then you put in movement. It could work great. So I think that's the difference of education. We need to educate our clients better. So sometimes when I see information where it's like, I did this one adjustment and they're pain-free and it's fixed their 10-year history of pain, I'm like, there's probably other components. And can we educate people that you need to have some self-efficacy and you need to learn to move a bit better as well, and you need to let your body adapt and change itself. You do get a hormone release with a joint adjustment. Feels great. And it gives you a rush and you get a chemical change, which makes things feel better. But I can click my neck and it feels better for a couple of minutes. But if the reason that it's stiff is because the muscles are tight and that's down to breathing mechanics, I could go back for an adjustment every week. If maybe it's not addressed the root cause. So that can come from, you might have some chiropractors who their business model is we're just going to do the adjustments. And if that helps people, that's their model. My model is I want to make meaningful, long-lasting changes. So if that comes down to better patient education, clinical-based research, we showcase this is how we make long-lasting changes, my opinion might be a little bit different. So that's a PC. I've got some really good chiropractor friends who are phenomenal clinicians, but also I see some stuff online and think, that is terrible.
I suppose that there's a business side to it, isn't there? Because your style, long-lasting changes through education and application, if you like, they probably don't need you again.
Yeah.
So it might not be... I mean, I'm not saying you want to be
Yeah.
just half-treating people, of course not, but at the same time, if everything you do, it's almost like the driving instructor analogy. Once you learn to drive, you don't need to use them again. So driving instructors, what you find is you need 3 more lessons. Whereas,
Successful patient for me is I've created meaningful change. We've taken the pain sensation away. They're then able to move better than they did before. So we've given them a skill set that they're not going to go in the same scenario which causes mechanism pain, and that's going to happen again. So they should move better and have a better education and skill set when they finish with me than when they came in. Yeah, people then don't rely on me, but actually the goal is to give people independence, self-belief,
You're actually
self-confidence,
solving a real
trust.
problem here.
Yeah.
Final question, Brent. What do most physios get wrong?
Communication. I think this is the biggest problem I find with clinicians. The NHS is a phenomenal service. Like, I've worked in the NHS and I see so many positive things it does, but what you can find is limited appointment timeframes, limited availability for review appointments. If somebody comes to see you and you have a 20-minute window, you can't assess all these things. You again can have what's your smallest, most meaningful impact you can have in that time frame. So your goal is to kind of clear that there's nothing nasty going on. This can change and get better, and here's some kind of generalized exercises that can help. It ticks a lot of boxes and it can help a lot of people. But what you'll find is you'll have these little niches of people who their bodies are put into demands that they maybe need some higher level strength work. Well, you don't have the opportunity, exposure and ability to communicate that to the patients. But also you might have people who come in with really bad lifestyle choices. You've got someone who smokes, drinks, doesn't move, poor hydration, and they've got pain. The pain is probably down to all these other components as well. So what you can find is that you're getting people coming in wanting a magic cure, and they've gone to see a clinician, and that clinician's giving them meaningful advice, but it's not the stuff they want to hear because it's not the sexy stuff. Looks way better going seeing a chiropractor, getting a joint manipulation, and it's all fixed. Nobody wants to address the fact that they're overweight, they don't drink enough water, they make poor lifestyle.
Cut out the dominoes.
Yeah, and they could be the components to why they actually have pain. So sometimes it's the fact that the education to help it, people don't want to hear that stuff. But also your communication skill as a clinician, you're so busy trying to make sure nothing nasty is going on, you don't always get the opportunity to have that. Whereas I'm luxury, I work in private practice, I determine how much time I spend with somebody. So if I want to spend an hour with somebody and have meaningful differences, I can probably achieve a lot more than somebody who has 20 minutes. That's not that I'm any better of a clinician. I have the luxury of availability of time, and then I choose what I get to do. So sometimes the outcomes I'll get is just the fact that I've chosen to work in a way that allows me to do that. Whereas, yeah, if you don't get that opportunity to communicate that fully, people feel unheard, rushed, and that they're just being chucked some exercises and thrown away. End of the day, every clinician wants the best for the people that come to see them. Every clinician wants to help. The reason you work in healthcare is you want to make a difference. But if your time limits that, them interactions maybe is not there. People come to me in private practice, if people don't like me, crack on. Like, that's fine. You can't help everybody. But I've worked for over a decade now, and I've built, if I can have a meaningful effect, I want to help people, and I'll do everything I can to help them. But if somebody doesn't want to help themselves, you can take a horse to water, but it doesn't make it drink. I'm also quite comfortable to say, you need to address some of these things. I can help you when you're at that stage, but if it's not right now, and people don't really like that because it's not, it makes way more sense. It seems way more fun to just go see, get that treatment and it fixes your problem. But looking deeper, you have to acknowledge there's a problem in the first time, and you actually want to make a difference. Some people's pain's their identity. If you've had pain for 10 years, every person you see goes, "Oh, how's your back, mate?" Like, yeah, it's still bad. Well, that's been part of their identity. If they address it and then they fail, it's scary. Like, if you go to see someone and you say you came to see me and says, "I've had this pain," and it doesn't just fix it. It's like, well, that didn't work. So you become fearful that nothing's ever going to fix it. So then that's where trust comes in. And this is where communication is massive. The better we educate and communicate as clinicians, we can change. And that's my goal with the Paddle Physio. I've got a wide audience of people who love sport, and I want to change how people move, how they feel, to keep them on court, but have a carryover into their life. Like, paddle is a form of exercise. Yeah, it's great, the sport's fun, but the difference that's making for people is we're reducing mortality risk, we're reducing cardiovascular disease, we're improving bone density, we are giving people spaces for social interaction, which helps mental health. We're building communities that actually have meaningful value in people's lives. And if I can keep people there and they enjoy it because they do some movement to move better, well, they're exercising, which makes them move better. They can have more meaningful interactions in their life. If they can sit in their desk job more comfortably in the day because they've been playing paddle a couple times a week, mint. It's actually having carryover into their life. So paddle is a form of exercise. And if you enjoy exercise, that has positive carryovers. My job is to put you in a position where you can exercise and you have the luxury of enjoying it because it doesn't hurt and you can do it and it feels good.
Brent, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on, and I wish you all the best of luck with your paddle physio and where you're going to go. I know that you're doing some phenomenal things. There was only so much I wanted to say on air because I don't know what you've got in the pipeline and all that type of stuff, and I don't want to jinx anything and stuff like that, but I just want to wish you well on that, mate, and I want to say thank you for coming on, mate.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.
So if you've enjoyed this conversation and you like things like this, make sure you click up there and watch this episode.